One of the somewhat more obscure features of TilePlus ToolKit is this tool called the template tool. What's it for? The template tool is used to create templates for use with the chunking system and the template selectors. This is something you can explore on your own by reading through all the documentation, specifically advanced TileFab use. But if we take a look at the game controller and we look at the zone layout that has the chunk template selector, there's a chunk size of 16. If we look at the chunk template selector, you'll see chunk layout template. If you look at chunk layout template, you'll see a number of TileFab GUIDs and a list of TileFabs. So let's see what this means. We'll now open up a chunk design scene I included on here. And what have we got here? We have 4 layers, 4 tile maps on the grid, and each of these sections is 16 by 16. So it doesn't really matter what's in here very much, but they're a little bit different. They're different colored. They have a few different things on each layer. Here, I've used the tile palette actually to cut and paste these into one 32 by 32 block. What the template tool does is it takes the chunk size, which is set in the TilePlus Painter settings, chunk size for snapping. You don't need to turn on chunk snapping though. And it will subdivide this into whatever size you want. So since the chunk size we have set 16 to 16, each chunk will be one of these. So we're creating a template of these 4 chunks. And when the selector is filling in unused areas, as shown in the chunking demo, it will cycle through these 1, 2, 3, 4. That can be seen in the code. So let's take a look at the template tool once more. You'll notice it says chunk size is 16. That matches here what the chunk size for snapping is. This is where you set that value. There's also chunk snapping world origin, which is the origin of the higher level grid that's of size 16. It's good to keep these at integer values. In other words, using something like 0.5, 0.5 can introduce rounding errors which come up because the tile map coordinates are only integers. Getting back to this tool, the way it's used is you drag the grid. You make sure these are what you want. Grid's there. This explains what to do. When the grid is populated, you can click Next. Template selector asset and hide created assets. These are things that the tool can do for you automatically. This one is probably really useful. If you look at, for example, what this actually should produce, you're going to get this. And you probably don't want all of these tile fabs and tile bundles to appear in your painter list of tile fabs and bundles, because it's going to get really long for no good reason. So in any case, now we use the palette or the grid selection panel to create a grid selection about the painted tile fabs that you want to use for a template. Now these don't have to be tile fabs to start with. You can paint these however you want. In the end, you do end up with tile fabs. It's going to subdivide this into however many tile fabs you want. Since these are 16 by 16, it's going to subdivide this into 4 areas. So let's draw a marquee around this. Alt 5, we pick the grid. So we can do this and click into here. Let's clear out all these. Now that the list is empty, let's create a grid selection. to pick one of the tile maps so that this works correctly. Hold down Alt F5, it says create grid selection. This is really interactive. It shows you the sizes you're going. This is easy because I know it's 32 by 32. Click that, and we have our grid selection. So create a grid selection, make the grid selection. In other words, it shows up here in the inspector. And we say make template. And we'll put it in a new folder. Now it's done. And we'll take a look at what we have. It should be identical to this. And it is. There's chunk template. The main difference that you'll see here is these GUIDs are obviously going to be different. And the TileFab's instances are different. But the number of items here is exactly the same. It's the template, and that's a selector which uses the template.